After years of being called the family's babysitter, my dad finally yelled, "If you want to live here, you'll have to start paying rent." I smiled, grabbed my bags, and drove off. A week later, my sister texted. The day I turned 18, my entire family gathered around the dining table with expectant faces. Nobody brought a cake. There were no presents wrapped in colorful papers sitting on the counter. Instead, my older sister Denise sat beside her husband Tyler Morrison, their 3 kids squirming in their seats, while my parents exchanged meaningful glances across the table. "We've been talking," my mother Lorraine began, folding her hands together in that particular way she did when delivering news she knew I wouldn't like. "Now that you're an adult, we think it's time you started contributing more to the household." I already worked 20 hours a week at a local bookstore while maintaining a 4.0 GPA during my senior year of high school. The money I earned went toward my college fund, something I'd been building since I was 15. My parents knew this. They'd always praised my work ethic, called me responsible, told relatives how proud they were of their youngest daughter. "What kind of contribution?" I asked carefully. Tyler leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Your sister and I have been thinking about going back to work full-time. The kids need someone reliable to watch them after school. We figured since you're here anyway," Denise added with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you could pick them up from school and keep an eye on them until we get home. It would really help us out." Their children were 9, 7, and 4. The oldest, Brooklyn, had a tendency to ignore instructions. The middle child, Preston, threw tantrums when he didn't get his way. The youngest, Willow, required constant supervision because she liked to explore cabinets and drawers, often making dangerous messes with cleaning supplies or kitchen utensils. "I have work," I said. "And homework. I'm taking 3 AP classes this semester." My father Kenneth cleared his throat. "Family comes first. Your sister needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. This is what families do for each other." The decision had already been made. I could see it in their faces, in the way they'd positioned themselves around the table like a tribunal. This wasn't a discussion. It was an announcement. 3 weeks later, I'd rearranged my work schedule to weekends only and requested early release from school for my final semester, citing family obligations. Every afternoon at 2:30, I left campus and drove to the elementary school to collect Brooklyn and Preston, then to the preschool for Willow. I brought them back to my parents' house, helped with homework, prepared snacks, mediated fights, and cleaned up the inevitable disasters that 3 children could create in a few hours. Denise and Tyler arrived around 7 each evening. They never thanked me. Instead, Denise would walk through the door and immediately start critiquing how I'd spent the afternoon. "Preston says you didn't let him have cookies before dinner. He was really upset about that." "Willow's hair looks messy. Didn't you brush it after her nap? Brooklyn mentioned you were on your phone. You should be engaging with them, not scrolling through social media." I wasn't on social media. I'd been responding to an email from my college admissions counselor about scholarship applications. But explaining this would have required Denise to acknowledge that I had my own life, my own goals, my own future to plan for. The criticism became a daily ritual. My mother started joining in, commenting on how I needed to be more patient, more creative, more attentive. My father would grunt in agreement from his recliner, not looking up from the television. Tyler never said much, but his presence felt like judgment. He'd walk past me without acknowledgement, scoop up his children, and carry them to the car as if rescuing them from inadequate care. 8 months passed. I graduated high school 3rd in my class. Nobody from my family attended the ceremony because Willow had a dance recital the same evening. I sat in the auditorium surrounded by classmates and their cheering relatives, accepted my diploma, and drove myself home to an empty house. The envelope from Northwestern University arrived in July. Full academic scholarship. Admission to their journalism program. A dorm assignment in a building overlooking Lake Michigan. I held the acceptance letter in my hands and felt something crack open inside my chest, something that had been compressed for so long I'd almost forgotten it existed. Hope. I showed the letter to my parents that evening over dinner. My mother glanced at it briefly. "That's in Illinois. Chicago is very far away." "It's a great school," I said. "The scholarship covers everything. Tuition, housing, books. I won't need any financial help." My father set down his fork. "What about your sister? She's counting on you for childcare. We made plans around your availability. I'll be starting college in August. I assumed you knew I'd be leaving for school." Denise had arrived for dinner that night, which should have been my first warning. She sat across from me, her expression shifting from surprise to anger in the span of seconds. "You can't just leave," she said. "We have jobs. We have responsibilities. The kids are attached to you. They barely notice when I arrive and hardly say goodbye when I leave, I replied. And I've been doing this for free for 8 months. I need to focus on my education. You live here rent-free, Tyler interjected. Your parents provide everything for you. The least you can do is help your family when they need it. Something cold settled in my stomach. This was the argument they'd prepared, the justification they'd constructed to keep me trapped in a role I'd never agreed to fill. There are state schools nearby, my mother said. You could commute. Continue helping with the children. You don't need to go all the way to Chicago. I earned this scholarship. I worked for it. My father's face darkened. You worked for it under our roof, eating our food, using our electricity. Everything you have, we provided. You don't get to be selfish now. The argument escalated. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Denise called me ungrateful. Tyler said I was immature. My mother cried about how I was tearing the family apart. My father simply stared at me with disappointment etched into every line of his face. I went to Northwestern anyway. Packed my car on a muggy August morning and drove 8 hours to Chicago. My roommate Christina was from Portland, studying environmental science, and she helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs while talking about her summer internship with a conservation nonprofit. The freedom felt disorienting at first. I could study without interruption. I could make plans without checking anyone else's schedule. I could exist in a space where nobody needed me to be anything other than myself. But the calls started immediately. Denise phoned twice a day, texting in between. My mother sent long emails about how difficult things had become, how stressed Denise was, how the children missed me. My father left voicemails about responsibility and family obligation. I tried to focus on my classes. Introduction to Journalism. Media Ethics. Contemporary American Literature. I joined the student newspaper, started covering campus events, made friends with other writers who understood the intoxicating rush of chasing a story. Thanksgiving break arrived like a looming storm. I drove home because refusing would have caused an explosion I didn't have the energy to manage. The moment I walked through the door, Denise handed me a list of errands she needed run, groceries to buy, dry cleaning to pick up. Since you're here, she said, as if my presence was convenient coincidence rather than a holiday visit. I spent Thanksgiving Day watching her children while the adults ate dinner in the dining room. They brought me a plate afterward, the turkey already cold, the mashed potatoes congealed. Preston spilled juice on my sweater, Brooklyn complained that I wasn't fun anymore, and Willow cried because she wanted her mother. December brought final exams and papers. I stayed on campus, telling my family I couldn't afford to miss study sessions. My mother called it selfish. Denise said I was punishing them. My father stopped answering when I called to wish everyone Merry Christmas. Spring semester started with new courses and a position at the newspaper as a staff writer. I covered a protest downtown, interviewed the organizers, wrote an article that got picked up by a local news website. My journalism professor called it promising work. My editor assigned me more stories. My family didn't ask about any of it. When I mentioned the article during a phone call, my mother interrupted to talk about Preston's soccer game. When I tried to tell Denise about making staff writer, she cut me off to complain about the babysitter they'd hired, how expensive childcare was, how much money I was costing them by being unavailable. You could transfer, she suggested. Come back home. We'd even pay you a little for watching the kids. I have scholarships here. Opportunities. A job at the paper. We're your family. That should matter more than some college newspaper. Spring break came, and I drove home again despite my instincts screaming at me to stay away. The visit was a disaster from the first evening. Denise had scheduled me to babysit every single day without asking. My mother had invited relatives over specifically so I could help cook and clean. My father barely spoke to me except to make comments about how college was making me forget where I came from. On the third day, I woke up to find Tyler in the kitchen, drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone. Your sister's really struggling, he said without preamble. This babysitter situation isn't working out. The woman we hired doesn't do things the way you did. I'm a student, not their nanny. Your family. There's a difference. Family doesn't demand I sacrifice my future for their convenience. He set down his mug with deliberate care. Convenience? We have careers. Bills. Responsibilities. You're a kid playing journalist at some expensive school, living in a fantasy world where nothing matters except what you want. I left 2 days early. Didn't say goodbye, just loaded my car before dawn and drove back to Chicago. The angry messages started before I hit the highway. Texts from Denise calling me selfish. Voicemails from my mother about breaking her heart. A long, cold email from my father about respect and gratitude. I stopped responding. Focused on my classes, my articles, my life in Chicago. Made friends who invited me to study groups and coffee shops. Started dating someone from my contemporary American literature class, a guy named Isaac who wrote poetry and made me laugh. Attended concerts and art exhibitions and poetry slams in neighborhoods I'd never heard of before moving to the city. Summer arrived, and I stayed in Chicago. Found a sublet near campus, got an internship at a community newspaper covering local government meetings and neighborhood events. The work was unglamorous but educational. I learned how to file Freedom of Information requests, how to read city budgets, how to ask questions that made officials uncomfortable. My family stopped calling regularly. The silence felt like relief and abandonment in equal measure. Sophomore year brought harder classes and better opportunities. I landed a reporting internship with a mid-sized newspaper covering suburban politics. The editor liked my work enough to keep me on part-time during the school year. I wrote about zoning disputes and school board meetings, local elections and community controversies. I went home for Thanksgiving again, a decision I immediately regretted. Denise had recently had a fourth child, a daughter named Paisley. She handed me the infant within minutes of my arrival. "I need a break," she said. "The baby never sleeps. You don't mind, right?" I minded. I minded all of it. The assumption that my time belonged to them, the expectation that I drop everything to meet their needs, the complete disregard for my own life and goals. Christmas break, I stayed in Chicago. My roommate Christina invited me to spend the holiday with her family in Portland. They welcomed me warmly, asked about my studies, wanted to hear about my journalism work. Her father was a newspaper editor who gave me advice about building a portfolio. Her mother was a public defender who shared stories about criminal justice reporting. It was the best Christmas I'd ever experienced. My family didn't speak to me for 2 months afterward. When contact resumed, it came through increasingly hostile messages about how I'd chosen strangers over blood, how college had turned me against my own family, how I'd become someone they didn't recognize. Junior year, I stopped going home entirely. Made excuses about internships and classes, work obligations and research projects. Some of it was true. Most of it was self-preservation. I graduated a year early by taking summer courses and overloading my schedule each semester. Accepted a position at a newspaper in Minneapolis covering municipal government. The salary was modest but sufficient. I found an apartment in a converted warehouse, adopted a cat from a shelter, started building the life I'd been dreaming about since high school. My family learned about graduation through a Facebook post. Denise called immediately, angry that I hadn't told them, furious that they'd missed the ceremony. "You never cared before," I said quietly. "You didn't come to my high school graduation. You've never asked about my work. You only call when you need something from me. That's not fair. We're your family. Family is supposed to support each other. What have you ever done to support me?" She didn't have an answer. The calls became less frequent after that. Holiday texts. Birthday messages. Occasional updates about the children. Surface-level communication that required nothing real from any of us. I threw myself into work. Covered city council meetings and budget hearings, investigated corruption allegations and misuse of public funds. Won a regional journalism award for a series about housing discrimination. Got promoted to senior reporter. Started mentoring younger journalists joining the paper. 4 years passed. I dated, broke up, dated again. Made friends with my neighbors. Took a pottery class. Traveled to conferences in other cities. Built a life that belonged entirely to me. Then my phone rang on a Tuesday evening in October. My father's number appeared on the screen. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. "Your mother's sick," he said without preamble. "Cancer. Stage 3. She's starting treatment next week." The news hit me like physical force. "What kind of cancer?" "Breast. It spread to her lymph nodes. The doctors are cautiously optimistic, but she needs support. Family support." "I'm sorry. That's terrible news. Please tell her I'm thinking of her. She wants to see you. We all do. It's been too long." 3 days later, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in years. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The neighborhood seemed shabbier. Everything felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. My mother had lost weight. Her skin looked paper-thin, her eyes sunken. She smiled when she saw me, tears streaming down her face, and pulled me into an embrace that felt desperate. "I missed you so much," she whispered. We talked for hours. She told me about the diagnosis, the treatment plan, her fears about the future. I listened, held her hand, promised to visit more frequently. For a moment, I let myself believe things could be different. Denise arrived that evening with all 4 children. They were older now: Brooklyn 17, Preston 15, Willow 12, and Paisley 6. They didn't recognize me. Brooklyn stared at her phone the entire time. Preston barely acknowledged my presence. Willow looked confused about who I was. Only Paisley showed any interest, asking questions about Minneapolis and my cat. "The kids have been helping out so much," Denise said. "Brooklyn picks up the younger ones after school. Preston helps with yard work. They understand family responsibility." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I'd failed at family responsibility. I'd chosen myself over them. I was the selfish daughter who'd abandoned everyone. That night, after everyone went to bed, my father found me in the kitchen. "Your mother needs you right now," he said. "I know things have been strained between us, but she's sick. She needs her family around her. I have a job in Minneapolis. I can't just leave. You could take time off. Work remotely. Figure something out. This is your mother we're talking about." His words carried the same weight they always had, the same expectation of immediate compliance. But I wasn't 18 anymore. I'd built a life away from this house, away from their demands and criticisms and endless needs. "I'll visit when I can," I said carefully. "I'll help however I'm able from Minneapolis. But I can't move back home." His expression hardened. "After everything we've done for you. Raised you, supported you, gave you a foundation to build your life on. And now when we need you, you turn your back. You didn't support my dreams. You tried to stop me from going to college. You made me feel guilty for having my own goals. That's not support. We gave you a roof over your head. Food on the table. Everything a child needs. That's basic parenting. That's the minimum obligation. You don't get to hold that over me for the rest of my life." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw working. "If you're not going to help your family when it matters, maybe you shouldn't come around at all." "Maybe I shouldn't," I agreed quietly. I left the next morning. My mother cried. Denise called me heartless. Tyler shook his head in disgust. My father didn't come out of his study to say goodbye. The drive back to Minneapolis felt longer than usual. I called my editor from a rest stop, explained the situation, asked if I could work remotely for a few weeks if needed. He agreed without hesitation, told me to take whatever time I needed, reminded me that family emergencies were always a priority. My family's definition of family emergency apparently meant abandoning my entire life to meet their needs. My editor's definition meant flexibility and understanding while maintaining professional responsibilities. I visited twice during my mother's treatment. Short trips, 3 or 4 days each. I helped around the house, drove her to appointments, cooked meals. Denise was always there, hovering, commenting, criticizing. My father barely spoke to me. The children treated me like a stranger who happened to share their last name. My mother went into remission after 6 months. The doctors were pleased with her response to treatment. Everyone celebrated. I sent flowers and a card from Minneapolis. Denise called a week later. "Mom's recovery is going to take time. She needs help around the house. Dad's not getting any younger. We thought you could move back for a few months, just until she's stronger. I have a job. An apartment. A life in Minneapolis. Your career can wait. Mom can't. She has you. She has Dad. She has 4 grandchildren living nearby. She has an entire support system. But she wants you. Don't you care about what she wants? I care about what I've built. I care about my career and my independence and my right to make my own choices. You're so selfish. You've always been selfish." I hung up. Blocked her number. Blocked my father's number. Kept my mother's contact information but stopped answering calls unless they were emergencies. 2 years later, I got engaged to Marcus, a public defender I'd met through work. He was kind and funny and respected my need for independence. He didn't expect me to sacrifice my ambitions for his convenience. He celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. I sent my family an announcement. My mother called, crying happy tears, asking about wedding plans. Denise sent a text asking if I expected them to travel to Minneapolis for the ceremony. My father didn't respond at all. We got married in a small ceremony at a botanical garden. Christina was my maid of honor. My editor attended. Colleagues from the newspaper came. Marcus's family flew in from Arizona. My family didn't show up. My mother called the day after, apologizing. She'd wanted to come, but my father refused to make the trip. Denise had said it was too expensive to bring all the kids. They sent a card with a check for $50. I deposited the check and never mentioned the wedding to them again. 2 years passed. I got promoted to investigative reporter. Started working on longer form projects, deeper dives into systemic issues. Won another journalism award. Marcus made partner at his law firm. We bought a house in a neighborhood near the river, adopted a dog to keep the cat company, hosted dinner parties for friends. My life was full and rich and entirely separate from my family. Then, on a cold February evening, my father called from a number I didn't recognize. It had been nearly 2 years since we'd last spoken, during that conversation about inheritance and family obligations that ended with mutual hostility. "We need to talk," he said. His voice sounded strained, older than I remembered. "About your future with this family." "I don't have a future with this family. You made that clear at my wedding. You're being dramatic. We're still your parents. This is still your home. That house stopped being my home when I was 18 and you treated me like live-in help instead of a daughter. We needed your help. Your sister needed support. That's what families do. Families also celebrate each other's achievements. They show up for important moments. They don't punish people for wanting their own lives." His breathing sounded heavy on the other end of the line. "Your mother misses you. She talks about you all the time. Wonders what you're doing, who you've become. She could call me. Visit Minneapolis. Meet my husband. But she won't, because you won't allow it." Silence stretched between us. "Then, if you want to maintain a relationship with this family, you need to make more of an effort. Come home more often. Help out when we need it. Stop acting like you're too good for us." Something inside me went very quiet and very still. I need to make more effort? I'm the one who left because you treated me like an employee instead of a daughter. I'm the one who got guilt-tripped for going to college. I'm the one who missed holidays because you couldn't accept my choices. And now you're telling me I need to make more effort? We raised you. We deserve respect. You deserve what you've earned. And what you've earned is a daughter who lives 8 hours away and doesn't come home for holidays. His voice turned hard. "If you want to continue living like we don't exist, maybe we should make it official. If you're not going to be part of this family, you don't get the benefits of being family." "What benefits?" "You didn't come to my wedding. You don't know my husband. You've never visited my home. What exactly am I losing?" "Your inheritance, for one thing. Your mother and I have been discussing our estate plans. We're thinking about leaving everything to Denise. She's been here, helping, being a real daughter." The threat was supposed to devastate me. It was supposed to make me panic, cave, come running back to play my assigned role. Instead, I laughed. Actually laughed, a sound that surprised both of us. "Leave it to Denise," I said. "She's earned it by staying close and meeting your demands. I don't want anything from you. I've built my own life, made my own money, created my own success. Keep your inheritance. I don't need it." "You're serious?" "Completely serious. I stopped needing anything from you the day I drove to Northwestern. Everything I have now, I earned myself. You can't take that away by threatening to cut me out of a will." More silence. "Then, if that's how you feel, maybe you shouldn't bother coming around anymore. Maybe I won't. Your mother will be heartbroken. My mother has had years to reach out, to build a relationship separate from your control. She chose not to. That's on her, not me. You're making a mistake. Family is everything. Family is supposed to be a source of support and love. You turned it into a weapon to control me. I'm done being controlled." I hung up. Sat in my kitchen with my phone in my hand, my dog's head resting on my lap, my cat purring on the counter nearby. Marcus came home from work 20 minutes later and found me there, staring at nothing. "What happened?" he asked, concern flooding his voice. I told him about the call, the threats, the ultimatums. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry they can't see how amazing you are. I'm sorry they spent your whole life trying to dim your light instead of celebrating it." We stood there in our kitchen, in the house we'd bought together, in the life we'd built from scratch. Outside, snow was falling, covering the city in fresh white silence. Inside, I felt something release, some final thread of hope that things could be different. My family couldn't change. They didn't want to change. They wanted me to shrink back into the role they'd assigned me, to prioritize their needs above my own dreams, to sacrifice my future for their convenience. I couldn't do it anymore. Wouldn't do it anymore. 3 weeks later, I received certified mail. Legal documents officially disinheriting me from my parents' estate. My father had actually followed through, put it in writing, made it legal and binding. Denise sent a triumphant text. Hope you're happy. You chose your career over family, and now you get to live with that choice. I read the message, then blocked her number too. Months passed. My mother tried to call from different numbers, leaving tearful voicemails about how much she missed me, how she wished things could be different. But she never said she was willing to stand up to my father, never indicated she'd choose a relationship with me over keeping peace in her marriage. I stopped listening to the voicemails. Stopped checking messages from unknown numbers. Put all my energy into work and my marriage and the life I'd chosen. My investigation into local government corruption won a National Journalism Award. The ceremony was in Washington, D.C. Marcus came with me, dressed in a suit he'd bought specifically for the occasion. We danced at the gala afterward, surrounded by journalists and photographers and people who understood the value of speaking truth to power. Nobody from my family knew about the award. I didn't tell them. They'd either dismiss it as unimportant or find a way to make it about themselves. 18 months after my father's threat about disinheritance, I got pregnant. Marcus and I had been talking about starting a family, weighing the challenges of balancing two demanding careers with raising children. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but it was wanted. We told friends and colleagues. Marcus's family threw us a shower in Arizona. Christina flew in from Portland to help set up the nursery. My editor offered flexible scheduling for after the baby arrived. I didn't tell my family. Didn't see the point. They'd either try to insert themselves into my life again or criticize my choices about work-life balance. Either way, their involvement would bring stress I didn't need. My daughter was born on a sunny morning in June. 7 pounds, dark hair, lungs that could wake the entire hospital. Marcus cried while holding her for the first time. I felt something shift inside me, a bone-deep understanding of how a parent should love their child. Unconditionally. Without demands or expectations. With celebration of who they were, not attempts to mold them into who you needed them to be. We named her June, after the month she was born. Simple and clear and entirely ours. 3 months later, my mother showed up at my house unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing on the porch, tears already streaming down her face, luggage at her feet. I couldn't stay away anymore, she said. You're my daughter. I need to meet my granddaughter. My first instinct was to close the door. To protect the sanctuary Marcus and I had built, to keep the toxicity of my past away from June's innocence. But she looked so small standing there, so much older than I remembered. And she'd come alone, without my father or Denise, which must have taken courage I hadn't known she possessed. Did Dad send you? He doesn't know I'm here. I told him I was visiting your Aunt Paula in Florida. I couldn't take it anymore, the silence, not knowing my own daughter, missing out on your life. I let her in. Made tea. Introduced her to June, who was sleeping in a bassinet in the living room. My mother stood over the baby for a long time, crying quietly, reaching out to touch June's tiny hand. She's perfect, she whispered. We talked for hours. Really talked, for the first time in years. She told me about the dynamics at home, how my father had become more controlling over time, how Denise had encouraged the rift because it meant more inheritance for her. She apologized for not standing up for me, for choosing peace over protecting her daughter. I was scared, she admitted. Scared of your father's anger? Scared of being alone. I let that fear drive me to hurt you, and I'm so sorry. Why now? Why come here after all this time? Because I realized I'd lost years with you already. Every day that passes is another day I can't get back. I don't want to lose any more time. It wasn't enough to erase the past. Years of hurt and disappointment don't disappear because of one apology, one visit. But it was something. A crack in the wall that had stood between us. My mother stayed for a week. Met Marcus properly, helped with the baby, cooked meals in my kitchen. We established boundaries. She agreed not to tell my father where I lived or share details about my life. I agreed to video calls once a week, to sending photos of June, to rebuilding our relationship slowly. When she left, we both cried. But this time, the tears felt different. Less like grief, more like cautious hope. 6 months later, my mother filed for divorce. Packed her belongings while my father was at a fishing trip, moved in with her sister Paula, hired an attorney Marcus recommended. The divorce was ugly. My father fought every detail, tried to hide assets, contested the settlement. Denise called me for the first time in years, screaming about how I destroyed the family, how everything was my fault. I listened for 30 seconds, then hung up and blocked the new number she'd used. My mother moved to Minneapolis after the divorce was finalized. Found an apartment 10 minutes from our house. Started therapy to process decades of difficult marriage. Built a relationship with June that was loving and healthy and completely different from how she'd parented me and Denise. I can't undo the past, she told me one afternoon while we watched June play in the backyard. I can't give you back the years I failed you. But I can do better now. I can be the mother you deserved all along. It wasn't perfect. We still argued sometimes, still had moments of tension when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But we were trying, both of us, to build something new from the broken pieces of what came before. Denise sent occasional texts, usually when she wanted something. Money for her kids' activities. Help with my father, who'd become bitter and isolated after the divorce. Information about my mother, who'd cut off contact with my sister entirely. I never responded. That bridge had burned years ago, reduced to ash by her constant criticism and entitled demands. My career continued to grow. I moved to a larger newspaper, started covering national politics, traveled for stories across the country. Marcus's practice expanded. We had a second child, a son we named Henry. My mother was there for his birth, standing beside Marcus in the delivery room, crying tears of joy. June started kindergarten. Henry took his first steps. Life unfolded in the beautiful, chaotic way it does when you're building something real. 5 years after my father's threat about the inheritance, I received a letter from an attorney. My father had died of a heart attack. The funeral had already happened. Denise had arranged everything, invited selected family members, explicitly excluded me. The letter informed me that I'd been disinherited years ago, so there was no inheritance to claim. It suggested I not attempt to contest the will. It was formal, cold, and utterly unsurprising. I read it twice, waiting to feel something. Grief. Anger. Regret. Instead, I felt nothing. The man described in the letter was a stranger. Whatever relationship we'd once had died years ago, long before his heart gave out. My mother cried when I told her. Not for her ex-husband, but for the finality of it, the door that had closed forever on any possibility of reconciliation between him and me. Do you wish you'd tried harder? She asked. Reached out one more time? I thought about it honestly. No. I spent 18 years trying to earn his approval. I spent years after that trying to maintain a connection. He made it clear over and over that love was conditional, that acceptance required sacrifice. I'm not sorry I stopped playing that game. She nodded slowly. I wasted so many years being afraid of him. Letting him control everything. I look back and barely recognize the woman I was. You're different now. That's what matters. 3 months later, Denise called from yet another number. Her voice sounded strained, exhausted. Dad left everything to me, she said without preamble. The house, the savings, all of it. But there are medical bills. So many medical bills from his last year. And the house needs repairs before I can sell it. I'm drowning here. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I thought maybe you could help. Alone, just until the estate settles. You're doing well, right? Your fancy journalism career must pay decently. No. Silence. Then, no? Just like that? I'm your sister. You're the person who called me selfish for going to college. Who criticized everything I did? Who celebrated when Dad disinherited me? You made your choices, Denise. Now you get to live with the consequences. Please. I'm desperate. The kids need things. Tyler lost his job. We're barely keeping our heads above water. That's terrible, and I genuinely hope things improve for you. But I'm not your solution. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the person you get to use when it's convenient. I'm begging you. You should have thought about that before spending years treating me like garbage. Goodbye, Denise. I hung up. Blocked the number? Told Marcus about the call. He held me while I cried, not for Denise, but for the sister I'd wished I could have, the family I'd wanted but never received. You made the right choice, he said quietly. You know that, right? You don't owe them anything. I know. It just still hurts sometimes. That's because you're a good person. The fact that it hurts means you haven't let them turn you cold. That's a victory, not a weakness. Last week, June asked about my father. She'd been learning about family trees in school, wanted to know about her grandparents. I told her the truth, age-appropriate but honest. That my father and I had a difficult relationship. That sometimes families don't work out the way we hope. That it's okay to choose distance from people who hurt us, even if they're related by blood. But you have Grandma Lorraine, she said. And she's really nice. She is. And that's what matters. We build family from the people who love us well, not just the people we're related to. Do I have to love someone just because they're family? No, sweetheart. You get to choose who deserves your love. You give it to people who treat you with kindness and respect. She thought about this seriously. Then I love you and Daddy and Grandma and Henry and my friends at school. That's a great list. Looking back, I don't regret leaving. I don't regret choosing Northwestern over staying home to babysit. I don't regret building a life in Minneapolis, marrying Marcus, having my children far away from the toxicity I grew up in. Some people might say I'm selfish. That family should come first. That I abandoned people who needed me. Those people don't understand what it costs to stay in a situation that slowly erodes your sense of self. They don't know what it's like to be valued only for what you can provide, not for who you are. I chose myself. I chose my dreams. I chose a future that belonged to me instead of one dictated by other people's demands. And in doing so, I built something better than I ever could have had if I'd stayed. A life filled with purpose and love and relationships built on mutual respect instead of obligation. My father thought threatening to disinherit me would bring me to heal. He thought taking away my inheritance would devastate me, force me back into the role they'd assigned. He was wrong. Because by the time he made that threat, I'd already inherited something far more valuable than money or property. I'd inherited my own future. And nobody could take that away.